Welcome back to the C Block, our final section of this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Jimmy Young. Yes, Elena Pinto will be back for our next show on June 2nd, and hopefully by then, you'll have downloaded the PCM TV app. It's now available at the App Store and Google Play. All you have to do is scan that QR code. Plus, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're up to over 15,000 now, but we could use a few more. And as we continue to grow our reach, we want to get back to our state reports. And this time, we head to the mile-high state of Colorado, where sales are tanking so far in 2025. Xavier Jaillet is our man in Colorado, and here's his report for this week.
I'm Xavier Jaillet, chair of the Colorado chapter of the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce and an attorney at the McDonald Hopkins law firm. And this is what's happening in Colorado cannabis news this week. I've got two stories to report on, sombering stories for the Colorado cannabis industry. The first is that Colorado sales are down $20 million for the first 2 months of 2025, as reported by the Marijuana Enforcement Division, reflecting a continued downward trend for the Colorado market since 2017, 2018, and of course the COVID era where cannabis was declared essential. So unfortunate news for sales in the Colorado industry for the first few months of 2025. And the second story is that House Bill 25-1209, which was a bill to allow retailers and brands to provide samples to customers and to increase purchase limits from 1 ounce daily to 2 ounces daily for the recreational side of things, unfortunately did not pass the House in Colorado and will not become law. So sales are down, and some bills that would help the industry with purchase limits and providing samples in Colorado, unfortunately, are the two stories for this week. And it reflects kind of an ongoing challenge that the Colorado industry has dealing with regulators and lawmakers since the Colorado industry, quite frankly, came online in 2014, pushing back against things that would help Colorado marijuana and cannabis businesses progress and move forward like we do see in some other states. So that's it for Colorado cannabis news this week. My name's Xavier Jaillet, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
The Texas House of Representatives passed a bill this week that would see the state expand its already existing but struggling medical marijuana program. The list of qualifying conditions has expanded to include chronic pain, glaucoma, traumatic brain injury, spinal neuropathy, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, degenerative disc disease, and any terminal patients in hospice or palliative care. Military veterans would also be allowed to register as cannabis patients so they can gain access for their PTSD or other ailments. Considering the legislature is still trying to figure out how to control their hemp industry, this is a major step towards positive reform for the Lone Star State. This bill now moves into the Senate in Texas. Now, let's check in with Joe Parsons in Virginia.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection by Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 3WB, and reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I have some sobering news to report for this week, as according to the Virginia State Police, there's an alarming increase in the amount of teenage vape use that's going on in the Commonwealth. We're not just talking about the vape use that comes from nicotine, we're talking about the vape use that comes from THC derivatives that are found in almost every convenience store in Virginia. In 2021, we as a people voted to put cannabis behind a safe, regulated, and age-verified counter. And ever since then, our governor, Glenn Youngkin, has done nothing except make sure that that does not become a reality. The problem lies that convenience stores don't really care what they're selling. They don't really care who they're selling to. They only care that they're selling products. And without these products being tested and verified, then there's no telling who they can wind up with. So if you haven't already done so, people, now's the time to contact your local senators, your congressmen, anybody that will listen. And especially, whatever candidate you choose to be the next governor, you need to write them a letter, write them an email, send them a phone call, and let them know that our children deserve better that we deserve better. The cannabis needs to be put behind that age-verified counter the way that we, the people, voted to make sure that our children would be safe. So, if you haven't already done it, now is the time. And another good way to help out is just to simply subscribe to Pro Cannabis Media. The more that we get our voices out, the more that everyone will know that this is a real problem and something that needs to be addressed. So, that's going to do it for this week from the Virginia Cannabis Connection and reporting from Cannabis Coast to Coast News. As always, I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
One of the major themes and hot topic this past week in Washington, D.C. a few lobbying days is what to do about hemp. Now that the cannabis light version of the plant is established all over the country in both adult use legal and adult use illegal states for its potent Delta-9 cousin, both sides, of course, of the plant want regulation and guide about how best to infuse food and beverages with this product, and of course, where to sell it. And if the FDA had actually done their job when the Farm Bill passed in 2018, we wouldn't be here right now, but that's in the past. The future is the great unknown. Kerry Hinkle is our new hemp reporter, and his report this week looks at Delaware and the battle that's brewing there with big alcohol. Here's Kerry Hinkle.
This is Kerry Hinkle from Bayou City Hemp out of Houston, Texas, and this is your hemp report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This week, we head up to the Northeast in Delaware, where they are the latest state to try and implement some much-needed regulations on hemp products. The problem? As I've reported in past weeks, this has big alcohol written all over it. And that's because hemp beverages would only be allowed to be sold in licensed package stores. And so, while the intent of the legislature is to regulate hemp beverages like beer and wine, they're not allowing hemp beverages to be sold where beer and wine is sold. This means bans on-premise consumption of THC beverages in places like bars and restaurants. You know, in our tap room in Houston, we dispense hemp beverages on draft with kegs, and consumers love it. And we want to see this type of normalization and adoption of hemp beverages for on-premise consumption spread across the country. And so we're pushing hard against that ban of on-premise consumption of hemp beverages in the state of Delaware. The bill would also ban grocery store and convenience stores from being allowed to be sold hemp beverages. And you know what is sold right now in convenience stores, in grocery stores in the state of Delaware? Beer and wine. And so if you want to regulate this like beer and wine, just let us be sold where and how beer and wine is currently sold. And so we have heard reports on the ground that there has been positive movement after the committee hearing this week to understand the issues with the bill and to hopefully open up some retail access of these products. But as in all things policy, the devil is in the details. So we are going to monitor closely as a House floor amendment could be adopted in the coming weeks that would expand retail access. But again, we won't know until we see the amendment and what the language exactly looks like. As always, hemp policy never stops. So this is Kerry Hinkle with Bayou City Hemp, and I will see you again next week for another hemp report on Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
If you look around the country, you won't find many states as dysfunctional as Alabama. That state voted in a medical program 4 years ago, and they have yet to open up one store or even issue one license that hasn't led to a lawsuit. Jennifer Boozer hosts a local radio show in the Cotton State, and she also runs a hemp shop with a variety of CBD products that now have to be taken off the shelf since Governor Kay Ivey basically just banned all intoxicating hemp products. PCM TV founder Jimmy Young was introduced to Jennifer by Michigan's Amy Carter, and Jennifer will be our Alabama correspondent moving forward. Here's Jimmy with the host of the Sweet Home Canna Bama podcast.
Thanks, Karen. Yes, we are very excited to introduce you to a new contributor to the Cannabis Coast to Coast news team. Her name is Jennifer Boozer, and she is a well-known personality in Alabama. That's right. Now do the quick thing in your mind. Alabama has cannabis? Yes, they do. Jennifer's an advocate. She knows the history. She's been in the trenches. Her show is Sweet Home Canna Bama. Jennifer Boozer, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Jimmy, for having me. I'm very excited to get to connect with you guys in the news.
Well, more importantly, you're in the South, okay? And I'm up in Massachusetts, and we've got coast to coast coverage: California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Michigan, of course, with Amy Carter. We give her credit because she's the one who introduced us. And
Yes.
then we get into the Northeast and the East, and we have Washington, D.C., and Virginia, and Maryland, and New Jersey, New York. I've had Connecticut, I've had Maine, I've had New Hampshire, I've had Vermont. We're always looking for new contributors to this program because I believe, and you understand this, every state is different, isn't it, Jennifer?
Oh my goodness. Did you say a mouthful? Yes. And I know that Alabama is the last on the list for anybody outside of Alabama to actually have legalized or have any access or information or good education.
Yeah. So again, go back to what we've talked about, which is give me a quick recap of the history of cannabis and hemp, because you're involved in that industry. You're in that industry.
Right.
What goes on in Alabama? I do know this, that they've had 4 years to get something going, and they haven't been able to do it because they've been in court the whole time over 4 years. That's how much.
Yes. As far as medical cannabis goes, we finally got the bill passed in 2021, and it has been 4 years. They actually issued licenses 3 different times. They give them, take them back, give them, take them back. There were these lawsuits. Now Alabama, always one of the main people suing, has gone to the federal courts. I'm sure everybody has seen that in the news this week. Not sure if that's anything but a PR stunt, because they're not winning in Alabama. So all it's doing is holding up the patients. At the end of the day, that's what I care about, and I'm in the hemp industry. Thankfully, I can stand in the gap for those people. We are the only access that Alabama has. And unfortunately, after 7 years of good business, we just had a bill pass, HB 445, that will now knock out 90% of our products and set up regulations that are so much stricter than any other industry, including alcohol, that none of us will be able to stay in business if this law stands. So the people of Alabama went from having wide access to a free market of hemp products and at least a passed bill with the potential to someday be open dispensaries, although it's 37 for 67 counties and a national embarrassment. We are all that Alabama has had, and now they're taking all of it away all at once with the stroke of a pen. And that just happened 2 days ago.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we're talking this week. I certainly knew that news item and all that. What can happen next? Because we're a litigious society here in the United States of America. Our friends, the attorneys and lawyers that are there for us for the reason that they go to school.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, unfortunately, in Alabama, the state legislature likes to do things that aren't exactly constitutional, and they force us to litigate. So we're going to court, of course, if that's the option available to us. We don't want to spend $500,000 fighting our own legislators.
And by the way, this is what bothers me about what's going on in this country, and hemp is right in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. And Texas is a perfect example because hemp is everywhere. And I think there are 7 cities and towns that actually voted in decriminalization of cannabis. And yet the state doesn't like it, so they're fighting it. Now they've got a court battle on the Constitution, and it's like,
right.
Oh my God, they created this mess when they passed that farm bill in 2018. And they gave the FDA the opportunity to create regulations for a vibrant industry that evolved without regulation because they got no direction from the people that voted it in the first place.
Right. And those of us out here are self-regulating. I made my store 21 and up when you could still buy cigarettes at 19 in Alabama. And then when they raised the federal age and the state age to 21, finally, we were already ready doing that. I have a sign on my door, couple. We age gated voluntarily because I don't want some 19-year-old to come in and get a product, not know what they're getting, not listen to me, trying to teach them to consume responsibly, have a bad experience, and then their mama goes on Facebook. Right. We don't want that. And we certainly don't know any 6-year-olds who have a driver's license to come down and use their money to buy our products.
Yeah.
We don't sell to children. And that narrative of save the children is so dusty, crusty, and old in Alabama and in the whole country. we're not buying it.
Right.
And largely in Alabama, I would like to believe that because of the advocacy efforts of a lot of people, including myself and my radio show that goes out every Monday night for 6 years, nobody in Alabama is scared of cannabis anymore. There's a few outliers, but no one is afraid of it because they understand it now.
So now at least you know where the state of Alabama stands when it comes to hemp products. But they're not the only state with a hemp battle on their hands. In Florida, for instance, two bills that would have regulated that state's hemp industry both stalled in the legislature. And now they sit in limbo since their congressional session is over. Now, when it comes to Florida, we like to check in with our correspondent down there. We call him the Master Gardener. His name is Jeff Aker. And unfortunately, Jeff had a horrible car accident a few months ago. And now, this week, he'll be getting his hip replaced as a result of that accident. I talked with Jeff this week about what's going on with Governor DeSantis and what is he up to now.
You cannot have anybody from like Colorado come down to get signatures, or Georgia standing in front of a dispensary getting signatures for the ballot. You can't have out-of-state people come in. As a matter of fact, due to the fact of my accident, I actually joined the medical marijuana registry here in Florida with my CLPD and my uncomfortable pain.
Yep.
And one day into my trip into one of the dispensaries, I signed a petition that Smart and Safe Florida has put out for the ballot.
As many of you know, last week I was in the nation's capital for Lobby Days hosted by the National Cannabis Industry Association. Their executive director, Aaron Smith, and I are hosting a weekly podcast called The Voice of Cannabis, and we get to go over the issues of the day, and that seems to change on a weekly basis when it comes to cannabis. Now, many states like Texas are trying their best to take the tool of a ballot initiative away from U.S. citizens, and some are trying to make it a permanent policy when it comes to getting the cannabis question on any ballot. Aaron and I debriefed about the NCIA's Xavier event, those was Lobby Day, and he was proud of the fact that they coordinated over 100 meetings during the two Lobby Days in our nation's capital.
Okay, Aaron, Lobby Days 2025, your 13th annual, is now history in the rearview mirror, as they say. What were your impressions of the last few days in Washington, D.C.?
Well, as always, it was a great advocacy experience for us and for the members of Congress and their staff that participated, and most importantly, the members of NCIA. We took over 100 meetings across Capitol Hill to inform and educate lawmakers on issues like 280E, banking, and the need to end federal prohibition.
Right. And for the most part, can you tell before you go into the meeting, is this going to be a friendly meeting or a confrontational meeting?
Yeah, I mean, you can. I mean, we have voting records for most of these members, and in some of them maybe we don't know because they're freshmen, but you would be surprised, they're almost always friendly. Even if their boss, because most of these meetings are with the staff. The staff often support cannabis reform because it's a generational issue and they're younger, typically, and even if their boss doesn't. So you'll always be pleasantly surprised that it's quite a friendly environment and cordial.
And can you take the temperature of Capitol Hill right now? Is there a chance that the States Act has some legs at some point this year?
There's always a chance. It's the challenge right now is there are hundreds of competing issues, and in some ways the world seems like it's on fire, and cannabis reform is one of many other issues that aren't quite on the top of the priority list just yet. So I mean, but that's why we're there. That's why we have to keep pushing this thing forward, or we'll never get on top of the list.
And finally tonight, how about hanging out with Snoop Dogg on New Year's Eve this year? After all, this guy seems to be everywhere, and wherever he goes, so does his favorite herb, cannabis. This year, Snoop will be taking his act on the road to Miami, Florida for a 2-hour special on NBC and, of course, their affiliates. Now, they're promoting it as an unforgettable night with Snoop Dogg. Not being in Miami on December 31st really doesn't sound like it would be a tough assignment, especially if I was 14 years younger, which I am not. Anyway, that will do it for this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm PCM TV founder Jimmy Young, reminding you all that it is a whole new world of weed out there, so please learn about it and consume responsibly. We're all going to take the Memorial Day weekend off, so our next news show will be anchored by Elena Pinto on Monday, June 2nd. So we ask you all to have a good, safe holiday weekend, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and thank our veterans for their service to our country.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Big Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Debbie Fazy with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Elena Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCM TV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Elena Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.